We have over 1,000 organizations around the world who have signed up and endorsed the vision for circular economy, where we're explicitly acknowledging that reuse solutions need to be prioritized as a preferred solution to plastic pollution.
So I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by Dee from our plastics team, who's here to answer all our big questions on this topic. Now, Dee, in this episode, we've heard a bit about the Global Plastics Treaty and the ongoing negotiations, and we understand that a big ambition of that treaty is to move from single-use to reuse. This might seem like a bit of a stupid question, but forgive me for asking it, but what do we mean by reuse?
Thank you, Seb. So when we talk about reuse, we generally mean business models where packaging is designed to be used multiple times for the same purpose. And of course, indeed, we mean packaging that gets used multiple times in practice. So it's not just designed to be reused. And there are many different examples of reuse. The most simple one is when we get a container that contains a product that we use. At the end of life, we return it, it gets cleaned, and then it can be reused again. So the really great thing about this is it really changes the way we think about packaging. In a reuse system, packaging is considered a valuable asset that has benefits both for the users and for the businesses. And to really bring reuse to life and to really make sense of all of these different types of business models, we published the Reuse book back in 2019. And we also have a live interactive database with really exciting case studies from around the world on our website, where you can filter by product type or by geography, and you can really get inspired by all of this innovation that's happening in the space. So do check it out.
So Dee, I guess you've told us really, but why should reuse be such a priority for the UN treaty negotiations?
Reuse is absolutely crucial for reducing plastic pollution, which is the goal of the UN Plastics Treaty. And it's one of the most effective ways to reduce plastic pollution. So we have estimates where by introducing and scaling reuse models, we can cut plastic leakage into the ocean by 20% by 2040. And we know also that reuse helps lower greenhouse gas emissions and really prevent extractive use of resources. So reuse is also a multi-billion dollar economic opportunity. We have studies that are demonstrating that, and it can really create jobs across the whole supply chain.
What I kind of hear you saying as well, Dee, both in the way you describe reuse and why it should be a critical part of the UN Treaty, is you are talking about moving upstream in terms of where we need to innovate, where we need to find solutions, not deal with the problem after it's already happened, but design solutions that create better outcomes, better economic outcomes, better environmental outcomes. So what are some examples in action of businesses and policymakers kind of applying reuse?
So reuse action has definitely been gaining momentum. And for example, with the global commitments and the Global Plastics Pact Network, we have over 1,000 organizations around the world who have signed up and endorsed the vision for circular economy, where we're explicitly acknowledging that reuse solutions need to be prioritized as a preferred solution to plastic pollution. Over half of the global commitment signatories have now launched reuse pilots across 7 sectors, including food and beverage and household. But at the same time, we do know the voluntary action alone is not enough to really accelerate and scale reuse at the pace we really need to see to be able to tackle the plastic pollution crisis. So beyond voluntary action, we also have policy action. We have legislation on reuse that is being introduced at the country level. And there's some really encouraging examples that we're seeing in Chile, in Australia, in France. And now really what we need to see to take that reuse at scale is really urgent global policy action, because no single country and no individual organization can do this alone. And this is where the UN Plastics Treaty comes in.
So Dee, what would you say are the major barriers to globally scaling reuse?
Well, really the biggest systemic barrier to scaling reuse globally is the lack of a globally coordinated approach that really creates that system change cooperation, creates the harmonized infrastructure we really need, and also creates conditions where the economics can really work for single-use, for reuse to be able to outcompete single-use.
And I guess then the obvious follow-up question to that around the barriers is, and it might be a question our audience is asking, is like, what role can this global plastics treaty, what does it play, what specifically can policy do to overcome the barriers to reuse at scale?
The UN Plastics Treaty is such a unique opportunity to really create these enabling conditions and create uniform legislation to be able to enable all of the players in the system to scale reuse globally. To do that, the treaty needs to do three main things. So it needs to introduce measures that really create harmonized reuse standards and definitions and standards for shared infrastructure. It also needs to complement that through measures that make the economics work and create a level economic playing field. And finally, it needs to introduce legally binding targets for reuse and really solid measurement that creates accountability and transparency in the system. And these are the recommendations that are also included in the position paper by the Business Coalition for Global Plastics Treaty that is supported by over 100 members that include some of the biggest multinational brands and retailers.
That definition conversation sounds fun. I'd really like to be involved in that.
So, Dee, where do we go next in the reuse space to ensure its success?
We really need to accelerate action and create more ambitious collaboration opportunities. So at the Foundation, our team is working with reuse experts and partners to create a very empowering vision for what a scaled reuse system of the future can look like. And we're doing this work using future visualization and analytical modeling to have a very credible, evidence-based vision for this reuse system of the future. And we are going to compare reuse economically, environmentally, and experientially to single use to really show how reuse systems can perform. We'll be sharing more of these insights later in the year, so stay tuned.
Great, so much more to come on the topic, Dee, and obviously those three recommendations feel really clear to me. We need to understand what it is and define it really clearly. We need the underlying economics to work, and we need to have these kind of legally binding targets that are driving the sector to innovate towards it.